You spent last Saturday on your knees in the flower bed, pulling up the same stubborn little green rosettes you pull up every single year, tossing them in the bucket, maybe reaching for a bottle of weed killer when your back finally gave out. Here is the detail almost every gardener misses while doing exactly that. A good handful of the plants you have been yanking out and paying good money to poison are the same ones. Herbalists have gathered on purpose for hundreds of years. That dandelion, that broadleaf plantain crushed into a spit poultice for a bee sting, that chickweed, that soft succulent purslane. They are not garbage. They are free medicine, growing on their own, asking nothing of you. So before you fill another bucket, let me show you 11 backyard weeds that are quietly free medicine, and how folks have traditionally used every one. Now let me be honest with you right at the start, because this audience does not tolerate nonsense. Nothing on this list is a cure, and nothing here replaces your doctor. These are plants that people have leaned on as gentle folk remedies for a very long time, long before there was a pharmacy on every corner. Some you eat. Some you brew into a tea. Some you crush and lay right on the skin. And one of them, coming up in the middle of this list, is the plant so tied to healing wounds that soldiers carried it into battle for centuries. And it still stops a little cut from bleeding faster than almost anything else in your yard. I will tell you exactly which one that is when we get there. If you like the idea of growing, or in this case simply keeping, plants that quietly earn their place, stick around, because this is the kind of gardening this channel is built on. Number 1. Dandelion. You already know this one. Those cheerful yellow heads and puffball seeds are the sworn enemy of every tidy lawn, and most people spend real money trying to erase them. But the whole plant, root to flower, has been used as a folk tonic for generations. It grows in zones 3 through 10, in sun or part shade, in the worst compacted soil you own, and it comes back no matter what you do. That toughness is exactly why it is free. The young leaves have long been eaten as a spring bitter green, the kind of slightly sharp taste that old-timers believed woke up a sluggish system after a long winter. The roots were traditionally roasted and steeped into a coffee-like brew, used to gently support the liver and digestion. Think of it the way you think of the first tender lettuce of the season, a little bitter, a little bracing, and good for you in a way you can feel. One honest caveat. Dandelion has a mild diuretic effect in folk use, so go easy if you already take water pills and only harvest from a lawn you know has not been sprayed. That last part matters more than anything, and it is going to come up again. Number 2. Broadleaf plantain. This is the one I teased at the top, and it deserves an early word even though its big moment comes later in the list. Not the banana. This is the low, flat rosette of oval leaves with deep parallel ribs that grows right in the cracks of your driveway and the hard-packed edge of every path. It grows in zones 3 through 12, thrives on being stepped on, and asks for absolutely nothing. It is possibly the most common healing weed on earth, and almost nobody knows what it is. For hundreds of years, plantain leaf has been the classic first aid poultice. As one herbal resource on plantain explains, the crushed leaf has traditionally been laid on cuts, scrapes, stings, and splinters to soothe the skin and draw out irritation. The old country method is exactly as humble as it sounds. You chew a clean leaf into a soft green pulp, the so-called spit poultice, and press it onto a bee sting or a nettle burn for quick relief. Picture keeping a roll of soft cloth in the kitchen drawer for small emergencies. Plantain is that cloth, except it grows itself and never runs out. Correct identification is easy once you learn those parallel ribs, and as always, only use leaves from ground that has not been sprayed. Number 3. Chickweed. Chickweed is that low, sprawling mat of tiny oval leaves and small white star-shaped flowers that fills in the cool, damp corners of the garden in early spring and fall. It grows in nearly every zone, 3 through 11, in part shade and moist soil, and it appears on its own the moment the weather turns mild. Most gardeners rake it out without a second thought. Traditionally, chickweed has been valued as a cooling, soothing plant for the skin. The old use was to crush the fresh leaves or simmer them into a simple salve, then smooth it over dry, itchy patches and minor irritations for gentle relief. The tender tops are also mild and pleasant eaten raw, tasting a little like fresh corn silk, so they went into spring salads as a light green. Think of chickweed as the aloe of the lawn, cool and calming, except it turns up for free in the shade where nothing else wants to grow. Rinse it well before use, make sure you have the right plant, and patch test any homemade salve on your inner arm first. Number 4. Purslane. Plenty of gardeners yank purslane out of their vegetable beds and toss it on the compost, never knowing they are throwing away one of the most nourishing greens on earth. This low, succulent weed with fat reddish stems and thick paddle-shaped leaves grows in zones 2 through 11 in any hot sunny spot, and it asks for nothing at all. It is free, it is everywhere in summer, and it is genuinely good for you. Purslane is one of the richest plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids there is, along with a good dose of vitamins A, C, and E. Traditionally, it was simply eaten as a cooling summer food, valued for keeping people nourished and hydrated in the heat. The tender stems and leaves have a pleasant lemony crunch raw in a salad. Or you can stir them into soups the way you would spinach right at the end of cooking. Think of it as the garden handing you a free serving of good fats and greens in the middle of July. Rinse it well, be sure of your identification since there is a look-alike called spurge that you do not want and only harvest from clean, unsprayed ground. Number 5. Yarrow. This is the one I promised you at the very start. Yarrow is that ferny, feathery-leaved plant topped with flat clusters of tiny white flowers, growing along field edges, in dry meadows, and in the neglected corners of many a yard in zones 3 through 9. It spreads on its own and shrugs off drought and poor soil, which is why it so often turns up uninvited and stays. No plant on this list has a longer healing reputation. Yarrow has been used to stop bleeding from small wounds for so long that its Latin name, Achillea, points back to the Greek hero Achilles, who legend says carried it to treat soldiers on the battlefield. That styptic, bleeding-slowing use is its most historically documented one. And it was even listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia through much of the 1800s for exactly that purpose. The traditional method is simple. The clean, crushed leaf gets pressed onto a minor cut or scrape to help it stop weeping. Think of it as the plant version of the little bit of pressure you instinctively put on a nick. One firm caveat here. Yarrow is potent and is in the ragweed family, so skip it if you have those allergies, avoid it in pregnancy, and treat it as first aid for the smallest cuts only, not a substitute for real care when a wound is serious. And that reputation is exactly why yarrow sits at the heart of this list. But the next plant does something yarrow cannot. It was traditionally taken as a gentle tea to help the body settle, not to patch a wound. Number 6. Red clover. You have walked past 1,000 of these without a thought. Red clover is the sprawling meadow plant with 3-part leaves, each often marked with a pale crescent, topped by those round rosy pink flower heads the bees cannot resist. It grows in zones 3 through 9 in sun, in ordinary and even poor soil, and it actually improves the ground it grows in by pulling nitrogen down into the dirt. A weed that feeds your soil while it grows. Not bad. The flower heads are the traditional part. For generations they were dried and steeped into a mild, faintly sweet tea, long used as a gentle spring tonic and in folk practice, especially by women looking for a soothing everyday brew. The whole spirit of it is gentleness, a soft cup of something that grew for free in the meadow rather than anything dramatic. Picture how a cup of chamomile signals the end of the day. Red clover tea was that same quiet ritual for people who had a field instead of a store. Because it is genuinely active, keep the amount modest, and if you are on any medication or are pregnant, check with your doctor first. Pick the flowers clean and dry, and again, never from sprayed ground. If you are enjoying this, take a second to subscribe. This channel is all about seeing the value in what most people overlook, and turning what you already have into something that saves you a trip to the store. Number 7. Stinging nettle. Do not let the sting scare you off. Nettle is one of the most nutrient-dense plants you can find, and people have gathered it for food and tonic for centuries. It thrives almost anywhere in zones 3 through 10 in that rich, slightly damp ground along a fence line or ditch, and it comes back stronger every year. You will not have to plant it. If you have it forever, and that is the point. Nettle is loaded with iron, minerals, and silica, and it was traditionally cooked or brewed into a tea used as a strengthening, restorative tonic, the sort of thing a tired body was fed in early spring to rebuild. The remarkable part is that all that sting vanishes the instant the leaf is cooked or dried, completely and reliably. Wear gloves to harvest the young tops, then steep the dried leaf for a deep green, earthy tea, or add the cooked greens to soup exactly as you would spinach. Think of it as the garden guarding its best food behind a thin fence of stingers, so that only the person willing to reach in gets the reward. Harvest young, wear those gloves, and take it from clean ground. Number 8. Cleavers. Cleavers is that clingy, straggling plant that grabs onto your sleeves and socks with tiny hooked hairs as you walk past, which is why some people call it Sticky Willy. It scrambles up through hedges and fills shady, damp edges in zones 3 through 9, appearing in cool spring weather and vanishing by high summer. You tend to notice it only when it sticks to you. Traditionally, cleavers was gathered fresh in spring and steeped into a cooling tea, long used in folk practice as a gentle support for the body's lymph system and a mild spring cleanser. Because it fades fast in the heat, people learned to use it while it was young and green, catching it in that short window. Think of it like the first asparagus of the year, a fleeting seasonal thing you grab while you can. The old method could not be simpler. Fresh green tops, cool or lukewarm water, left to steep gently rather than boiled hard so the delicate plant is not cooked to nothing. As with everything here, be sure of your plant and only pick from unsprayed ground. Number 9. Mullein. Mullein is hard to miss once you know it. In its first year, it forms a rosette of large, soft, felted leaves that feel like flannel, and in its second year, it shoots up a tall spike, sometimes higher than your head, studded with small yellow flowers. It grows in zones 3 through 9, loves dry, poor, disturbed ground, and turns up along roadsides and in the rough edges of a property where the soil is thin. Mullein has one of the most specific traditional reputations on this list. The dried leaves and flowers were long steeped into a tea used as a folk remedy to soothe coughs and calm the chest during a cold. The bright yellow flowers were also traditionally infused in oil and used, once cooled, as an old-fashioned comfort for a mild earache. Think of it as the herbal equivalent of a warm blanket and a hot drink when you are run down. One practical note. Those soft leaves have fine hairs that can tickle the throat, so any mullein tea is traditionally strained well through a cloth before drinking. Correct identification matters, and gentle amounts are the rule. Number 10. Lamb's quarters. Lamb's quarters is a tall, upright weed with soft, diamond-shaped leaves that often look as if they have been dusted with a fine, silvery white powder, especially the newest growth at the top. It grows in zones 3 through 11, in sun and rich soil, and it is one of the most common uninvited guests in a vegetable garden, shooting up wherever the ground has been disturbed. This one is food first and foremost. Often called wild spinach, lamb's quarters was traditionally eaten as a highly nourishing cooked green, richer in minerals than much of what we buy, and it fed families for free wherever it grew. The tender young leaves and tops are the part to use, gathered before the plant gets tall and tough. Steam them, sauté them, or drop them into soup exactly like spinach, and they wilt down mild and pleasant. Think of it as a free crop volunteering in the very bed you were about to weed. The sensible caveat, the same as with spinach itself, is to eat it cooked and in normal amounts rather than piling raw bowls of it, and of course to gather only from clean, unsprayed soil. Number 11. Violet. We finish with the prettiest weed of the bunch. Common blue violet is that low, sweet little plant with heart-shaped leaves and small purple flowers that quietly colonizes shady lawns and garden edges every spring, and that many people spray because it spreads through the grass. It grows in zones 3 through 9, thrives in the cool, damp shade where turf struggles, and asks for nothing. Both the leaves and the flowers are edible and were traditionally valued as a gentle, soothing plant. The old folk use was a mild tea or a simple syrup made from the leaves and blossoms, taken as a soft comfort for a scratchy throat or an irritating cough, the kind of gentle care you would give a child. The flowers were also candied or scattered fresh over food, pretty enough to feel like a treat. Think of it as the garden's way of hiding a little sweetness and comfort in the corner you were about to mow flat. Be certain you have true violet. Since there are unrelated plants with similar names, use the leaves and flowers only, and as always, harvest from ground you know is clean. Now one plain and important word before we finish, and I want you to actually hear it. Nothing in this video is medical advice. These are traditional folk uses, shared the way they have been passed down, not prescriptions. Before you eat or apply any wild plant, be completely certain of your identification, because a few harmless-looking weeds have dangerous lookalikes. Never gather from lawns, roadsides, or beds that have been treated with weed killer or chemicals, since the plant soaks all of that up. And if you are pregnant, on medication, or managing a health condition, talk to your doctor before trying any of these. Respect the plants and they reward you. Rush them and they can bite back. So there are your 11. And I know a list of 11 can feel like a lot to hold in your head at once, so here is how I would begin. Do not try to learn them all this weekend. Pick 2 or 3 that already grow in your yard and that you feel confident identifying. If you want the classic first aid weed, learn plantain and yarrow cold, because those two have earned their place for 1,000 years. If you would rather eat your medicine, start with lamb's quarters and purslane, 2 free greens hiding in your vegetable bed right now. Then walk your own yard this week with new eyes. That patch you were about to poison, look closer at it first. Picture it a season from now. A jar of dried nettle for tea on the shelf, a plantain leaf you knew exactly what to do with when a grandchild got stung, a handful of wild greens in the soup that cost you nothing. Your grandmother knew this ground the same way, weed by weed, and never paid a cent for it. Now you are starting to know it too. If you want more ways to see the quiet value in what is already growing around you, there are plenty more videos like this on the channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.